Man, I'll be honest with you. Like, I think once every 2 to 3 weeks, I watch like a buddy of mine or a friend of mine or somebody post something on Facebook about, tearing their Achilles, tearing their
Right,
hamstring, and they're, 40, 45, 50 years old.
right,
And, I think a lot of times it's like, hey, going from the couch or going from endurance training to reactive training, this power and trying to play sports with your kids, trying to do something quick, like you're just asking to tear something.
100%. It'd be like you, if I was coaching one of my clients and I said, hey, kid, listen, let's go in and let's try it. You haven't done any exercise at all. I'm going to throw you on a 250-pound squat, see how you do. I'm just going to
Yeah.
take it off the bar, see if you can hold it. Because that's what happens when all of a sudden you're falling and you're a 250-pound guy and you got to catch yourself. You got to catch all that weight in a really awkward position. But what works is our bodies, if you think about it, primal man didn't sit there and say, well, I'm going to go do a warm up before this lion chases me down. No, they just got up and ran because they were doing it all the time.
Right.
So you need to bring this component. Strength is important because it's the foundation of power. It's the force in the physics equation. But power you need to do regularly. But you just need small doses of it. And small doses of it keeps everything pliable. It keeps the muscles firing. The body says, okay, you're asking me to do this, so I'll be able to do it in the future because you're asking me to do it. But if you don't do it for months or years, and then you try to do it all of a sudden once, grabbing your kid or throwing a baseball or running the bases in a softball game and you haven't played softball on your team for a long time, all of those kinds of things become problematic if you're not doing it. That's why you need to do it.
So, what might be possible for, an adult, let's say 35 and over, if they just started training for power, like what do you recommend? Like 5-10 minutes to start out?
Sure. Yeah, that would be plenty. If you did two, and you can do it in rounds is the easy way to do it. So I'll give you a really simple one that's not dangerous. A very small plyo box step up, but you do it with speed. So you leave one foot on the plyo box, you step backwards, you drop that back knee to try to get as low as you can, then you come out of the hole with speed. You try to kick the foot up and bring the knee to the chest as you're stepping up, step back, do about, 6 or 8 of those in a row. That's a really good power exercise with very low risk. The only risk is if you fall off the box. If your balance is that bad, then you can actually do it from the floor and start there and not on a box.
So if we're talking about the box, is it what, like a 6-inch, 12-inch?
Yeah, 6 to 12 inches, no higher.
Okay.
That's all you really need, just enough, just like if you're going upstairs. Another great one, if you don't have any knee issues or anything else, you could do some stadium. If you go out, take a walk to a stadium, and then just sprint 5 stairs, and then rest. Sprint 5 stairs and rest. Sprint 5 stairs and rest. Or sprint 2 stairs. If that's all you can do the first time, just walk up as fast as you can, for 2 stairs. That is power. And then what you'll do is you'll start small and then start adding a base of it. Once you get a pretty good base where you can do 8 to 10 of those types of movements in a row, then you can start adding what you're already doing is the sustainable power. Where then you say, okay, I know I can do 8 of these with a medium height 18-inch plyo box, and I can do that. So I've gotten up to 18 inches. I can do a step up. I can feel pretty solid on it. I can do 8 in a row, no problem. Then you start adding in the sustainable power portion of it, where you would do, instead of doing 8, you would do 2, rest for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, do 2 more, rest. Instead of 8, you would get 12 or 15. So now you've almost doubled the amount of volume and power, but you've lowered the risk because you're not doing them all in a row anymore, but you're still doing the 18-inch plyo box. So the power output is the same on every one of those reps.
Okay. And if I wanted to do upper body,
Yeah.
one of the things you talked about was doing push-ups where, if you're brand new, you're going to put your hands on a elevated box or elevated bench. You would do them on that and do a push-up. And then if you're maybe more experienced, you could do them off the ground, pushing up and getting your hands off the ground.
Right.
Or if you're a little more advanced than that, you could do the clapping push-up and then back down. But how many reps would you suggest on that?
Well, you want to start with, like I start people on their knees with the explosive push-ups on a bench. So hands on the bench, knees on the floor. So it's a kneeling, like a kneeling push-up, but you've already added an angle and you're going to add speed. Now, here's the key. If you want to turn any exercise into a power exercise, you start at the end point of a strength exercise. Now, let me just walk you through that. So normally when you do a push-up, you come down and you push up, and the end point is at the top, okay? So I come down and then I push up. I come down and then I push up. If I want to turn that into a power exercise, I start the exercise at the end point with my hands extended.
So,
and then
like this.
Exactly. And then you let your chest drop with speed to the bench and then explode up. That's a power exercise.
Okay.
So if I was doing a dumbbell row, let's just use a dumbbell row as an example, a dumbbell row. Normally you start there and pull to your body. That's normally a normal dumbbell row would be you starting and pulling. Instead, start at the end point up there, let the dumbbell drop towards the floor, catch it and pull it back like you're starting a chainsaw.
It's like a lawnmower.
That's a power exercise now, because you're getting that stretch shortening. You have to decelerate the dumbbell at the low point, otherwise you'll drop it to the floor and pull it right back. So same thing with the push-up. You're going to let your body drop to the bench and then explode up with speed. So any exercise can be turned into a power exercise if you just turn the thinking on its head and allow that. So if I was doing an overhead press, normally I start from my shoulders and I press up over my head. I would start from this position, drop down, push up. That's a power exercise now. So because what I'm doing is I'm decelerating the bar or the dumbbells at this point and then pushing up at this. Now all of a sudden I'm adding power into my shoulders. So anything that you can do, you can create a power component of it. Pull-ups the same way. You would start holding at the bar and you would do like a muscle up, drop down, pull back up, drop down, pull back up, drop down, pull back up. So, but you just have to be careful that you don't use a lot of weight when you start, because it is taxing. So you have to start light, get the hang of it, and then work your way up to it.
And let's not forget, the point of all of that is to be able to sustainably do. So if you start with 2 reps or 3 reps, say on a pull-up, by the time I'm in the 8th round, I should still be doing that same amount of reps, correct?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm moving out of that sustainable power and moving into almost like an
endurance exercise. Exactly. What I tell people is I allow a 10% drop-off with my clients if I'm measuring it. So if you get to the point on a dumbbell row where you can't keep the speed up like you did in the early reps, or in a explosive push-up where it becomes a push-up, like a normal push-up because it gets so slow, then then you got to stop. One or two things has to happen. Either you reduce the total number of reps that you're doing in a row, or you give yourself a little more rest in between the sets next time. That allows you to do more. The goal is to get as much time at the highest output as you possibly can. That's what you want to do. So using the example of the push-up, if I start someone kneeling with their hands on the bench in that nice angle like this, then what I do is then I say, okay, now put your kneeling hands on the floor. And then I go, okay, now let's go into a regular push-up with your hands on the bench. And then eventually a guy like you, if I wanted it really difficult, I would put my feet on the bench, hands on the floor, and do a clapping push-up. Now you've really bumped up the amount of power.
Yeah, so, I haven't got there yet, man.
That's hard.
But, just from what I've learned, so I think I'm up to about eight rounds on like the clapping push-ups of 4 reps.
Yeah.
And then I've been doing a lot of the jumps and a lot of the standing long jumps. And then power cleans, I've been hitting 2 inside of like that 10 seconds. Now on rest, it's 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, 15 to 20, depending on your level of fitness. Now, the reason why your buddy, the triathlete, will probably be able to do it with less reps. That's why this program works so well for endurance sports at all. Any kind of it where you're going longer, as I said, than about 20, 30 seconds. So if your event lasts like 3 minutes or, like a 5K, and your buddy, the triathlete, your training partner, will start seeing improvements in his swimming, in his cycling, and in his running immediately, because he'll start producing more power more efficiently. So all of a sudden, the wattage that he produces on the bike will go up. His runs will feel better. His swim times will start to drop because he's able to start producing a greater amount of power. Now, he's got the endurance capacity to shorten up the rest. But someone who's unfit or isn't fit, you can toy with that. If you go too long, then it doesn't work as well.
Right.
So I like to go no more than 20 seconds between each effort. And 20 seconds of rest usually is good. With most of my really good athletes, I try to do the reps and the rest within 20 seconds.
Okay.
So you would do your 3 push-ups, explosive push-ups, and then you would just rest for around 17 seconds or so if it took you 3 seconds to do the push-ups.
Yeah, I kind of started looking at it as almost like a reverse Tabata. It's like that 8 to 10 seconds of work and then 20 seconds max of rest. I play somewhere between 15 and 20 seconds.
Right. Yeah, and that works great. Yeah, because what happens is if you go too long, then you're getting too much rest. And if you go too short, then the power production is going to drop because you can't produce the power because you don't have enough time. ATP replacement takes place in about 8 to 12 seconds. Typically, it starts to replace rapidly, but you'll get depleted as you get longer in the tooth. And then I also tell with my clients, if we get over 6 minutes of total time in one of these efforts, then usually you need to go up on the weight. So if you were, if you were doing broad jumps, let's say, and you're able to jump 6 feet in a jump, and you're able to go 6 minutes straight, 3 jumps, rest, 3 jumps, rest, then I would say, okay, let's go back now and let's see if we can go 6.5 feet jumping and go back down to 4 minutes.
Okay.
Because you're going to be putting out more effort now to get the 6.5 feet. So it's going to really tax you more. And that would typically, if you go over 6 minutes, then you're not at max power anymore. Usually if you can go that long, you're at a sub-max.
So if I was looking at rep range, it's somewhere between this 2 to 5.
Yeah.
5 almost being max rep range before we need to adjust something, whether it's intensity, whether it's weight or distance or height.
Exactly. Now what I do is I tie it to the event. So like your triathlete guy, I would lean more towards the 6 rep sets. But I had Cassius Marsh in here. We were doing 3 reps, 2 to 3 reps, and we would do it for only about 45 to 50 seconds total time. So because his event, when the ball snapped, a play doesn't usually last longer than about 20 seconds. But he needs huge, much bigger amounts of power.
Right.
So if I go back to that broad jump as the example, I would try to get him to jump to 7 feet or 8 feet on each jump, and then a little longer rest between each one, but the output would be much higher than yours if you were a triathlete or something along those lines. So I tailor it to the event. If it's a cyclist who's a short-term track sprinter, then I may do 6 reps, and I may only go for 3 minutes, but the power output's much higher. So it's dictated by the event itself.
Yeah, I like the cool thing I like is all of this stuff you're talking about, somebody could literally do in their living room if they wanted to as a workout at home or in a hotel gym. So you could literally do this anywhere, which is what I think is kind of cool and get a huge benefit out of it also.
Oh, 100%. Because the same thing now, let's just a core exercise. So if you want to look at a core exercise, and if you were to do a leg lift from the floor where you're laying on your back, traditionally you go down with the leg and then you come back up. In the power portion of it, you would start with your feet up, drop down, come up, drop down, come up, drop down, come up. So that becomes a power exercise because you're letting your legs accelerate to the floor, what I call the catch. you're loading eccentrically by catching and loading your core with all of that speed of your legs dropping and then having to bring it right back up. So literally you could do a full body workout in a hotel. You could do core, you could do squat jumps, you could do push-ups, you could do pretty much everything. The only thing that would be harder to do would be a pulling exercise unless you had some kind of a bar or something that you could pull, and that's a weight. But for the most part, you can do all of this at home with a couple of dumbbells, and you don't even need, you could use a chair that's sturdy.
Yeah, I've been working on doing kettlebell swings with this.
Or you can do it with kettlebell swings, exactly.
And, you know, because, you know, I think we get in the habit of doing swings like 12, 15, 20 reps.
Right.
And then it kind of diminishes, you know, the effects of what it is.
Right.
And so I've really been working on that. And then I also use the trap bar at times just to change it up. But it's been, I mean, I've noticed a lot, and I've noticed a lot more in my joints and just when I go into my strength stuff, how much stronger I am.
Yeah. You don't have this fatigue that you get. And so the joint, what happens is if you do power for long periods of time, as the muscle fatigues and it can't hold the integrity of the joint has to take the load. So then what happens is that's why you get the joint ache. So as long as you're staying close to your optimum power output, then the joint's not that compromised because the muscles are still fresh enough to produce max power. It means that they're holding on and supporting the joint very effectively. If you get to the point where you were to do 20, jump squats with the trap bar in a row, then the joint starts to become more vulnerable because your legs are getting so fatigued. Something's got to hold it, so the joint holds the weight, and the tendons hold the weight, and the ligaments hold the weight. But what happens is if you don't go that long duration, then the muscles stay fresh enough to maintain the integrity of the joint, and that's how it works.
Now, can you do this on a bike, like an Airdyne? Can you
Sure.
do this on a rower? Can you do this? You know,
so let me tell you how I would do it on a rower or an Airdyne. What I would do is first I would test my absolute power output on the Airdyne. So in other words, for a 10-second sprint, what's the biggest amount of speed that I could see? So, or on the rower, if I was rowing for 15 or 20 seconds, let's say I see a 137 500 meter output on the rower, or 128 or something else like that, 130. Let's just say 130. So 130 on the rower. Then what I would do is, that's your absolute power number, all right? Then what you do is then you start saying, okay, now I'm gonna do 5-second outputs at 130, rest for 15 seconds, 5-second outputs at 130, rest for, or 10-second outputs at 130, and then rest for 10 or 15 seconds. And then what happens is you start linking together that power, and you're gonna see your cardio output and your ability to produce power and buffer lactic acid go up dramatically. So I do it with my intervals on the VersaClimber. Same thing. I'll do a 10-second effort with a 5-second rest, 10-second effort with a 5-second rest. And depending on what type of outputs I'm trying to achieve, I'll either extend the duration of time. So, if I said, okay, I want to look at my 2,000 meter time on the rower, that's what I'm trying to bring down. Then what I may do is I may test my output for 30 seconds and see what's my average output for 30 seconds or 20 seconds. And then I would start breaking it into 20-second efforts, holding that max output, resting in between, holding that max output, and then little by little extending the amount of time I can hold that max. That's what will happen. So you can use it for intervals, because an interval is an absolute power exercise. It's just like a 100-meter dash.
Right.
That's what it is. But now all you're saying is I just want to extend my ability to hold that absolute power longer. So some of the best measurements.
Except the way that everything's been bastardized in our industry, intervals are no longer intervals. They're endurance workouts, because if you run 100 meters full out, you need 10 to 12 times more minimum rest than what it took for you to do that if you ran it as hard as you could. And what I find is most people, one, they don't go as hard as they can, And then on top of it, you know, you're doing these 30 on, 30 off. You're doing these negative rest intervals, and people like just don't know how to do a maximum output on the exercise. Not only that, it's not safe. And then, you know, they have some trainer yelling and screaming at them to, you know, to take a rest for the same amount of time, when we both know that, hey, if you ran 100 meters,
Right.
15 seconds, it's probably going to take you 4 to 5 minutes, if not more, to get that time back.
Oh, if you watch a 100-meter sprint and then watch the interview of the winner after the race, they're still breathing hard.
Yeah.
They're trying to catch their breath. They've already walked around the track, taken the victory lap, come back, and the commentator finally gets them, and they're still trying to catch their breath. You're 100% right. The problem with intervals, and because what an interval does for you, if you go anaerobic, especially as an older athlete, you get exercise-induced growth hormone. That's the real big thing. You can get a bump in testosterone. All these things that diminish as we get older are really, really addressed through going anaerobic, through heavy weightlifting, through short intervals. But what happens is if you just beat yourself to death by going these long cuts over and over and over again, your cortisol goes up dramatically, is what happens. It's a big bump in cortisol. Firstly, with testosterone, so it lowers testosterone, and you don't add muscle as well. This is why most strength coaches don't like their power athletes doing long cardio, because they're saying, we don't want to lower your ability to produce power when you're at a world-class level. But by doing the intervals correctly like this and measuring the output of the interval on the erg, on the Airdyne, on a VersaClimber, on something like that, you can then really start making gains using the same principles we talked about with power in a weightlifting scenario, and you're doing it on cardio. So you could do it on stadium stairs. All you do is you say, okay, I'm going to give myself 10 seconds, and I want to see how many stairs I cover. That's your absolute power measurement now, because you're carrying your body weight. Now that's your baseline. Now you start breaking up that same output and giving yourself rest and trying to say, okay, I'm going to cut it in half, and I have to do half of that distance in 5 seconds. And then I just start linking, and then I rest for 15, 20 seconds, then hit 5 seconds again, rest for 15, 20 seconds, 5 seconds again. And I just keep hitting that same output on every one, so I know I'm getting maximum output. So that's how you structure it, and that's exactly right. So you can apply this to intervals, and I do it all the time.
Awesome. So what's one habit you would have somebody start doing?
The habit that I would do, I would say you have to have 1 day a week of maximum sustainable power. If you could make one habit, if you could do this program with one lower body exercise, that's what I would choose. I would choose a lower body exercise like a step up or a broad jump like you're doing, or a jump up to a box, depending on your level of fitness and where you're starting from. If you do one of these a week, once a week, it's a game changer for your fitness. Now, if you can do one of these MSs over a week, be optimal. So, in other words, you just test your output for the 8 reps, 3 sets of 8 reps like you would do traditionally, and try to bump that output up. And then later in the week, for sustainable power, but if you can only do one, do the MSP sets at least once a week. And if you make this a habit, and then you can rotate through different muscle groups. You know, you could do a half and half. So you could really do a lower body and an upper body and be fine. It's just hard to combine 2 lower body exercises that are big, complex exercises together. Like, it'd be hard to do the box jumps and a jumping hex bar all in the same workout. But you could do a jumping hex bar and explosive push-ups. You know, you could do a jumping hex bar, explosive push-ups, and dumbbell rows. You could do all 3 of those. You would have your workout done in under a half an hour and you would be out the door with just going, oh my God, that was awesome. That's including your warm up, your cool down, and everything else. You could do it all in probably 20 minutes. So it doesn't.
And how, like, one of the things I've noticed is, I wear my Whoop band, but I've been getting my heart rate up to like 175, 180, doing these and training this way, which there's no way I can get it up that high, even just doing cardio a lot of times. So that's one of the things that I've really noticed, and my recovery has gotten so much better also.
Yeah, what happens is if you do the effort all in a row like a Metcon where you never stop, you can't go hard enough to get your heart rate up. So what's happening with you is by being able to go hard, rest for a short amount of time and go hard again, your heart rate is going to get higher, which is good. So it's a good stress, but it's manageable because the rest gives you the ability to manage it. You don't get bleary-eyed. Where you're going, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? Next thing you know, you wake up on the floor. That's what you don't want.
So how does somebody get in contact with you to find out more about you and what you do?
Sure.
Programs.
Instagram, Sirens and Titans Fitness. Facebook, we're on Sirens and Titans Fitness. You can contact us here at the gym, 310-307-0200. Is the number here in LA. If you're emailing me, Jaque Devore at sirensandtitansfitness.com, you can email me as well. And I'm really good about responding. Even with the book, people would put comments in with questions, and I put my email out there. And so if someone sends me a video and says, hey, Jaque, am I doing these walking lunges right, or am I doing my jumps right? I'll take the couple of seconds if you take the time to send me the video, and I'll say, hey, no. Get your hips down lower. Go to our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel as well, Sirens and Tights, which I have a ton of exercise examples on there. Lots of it being sustainable power, how to do a number of different exercises. So it's a wealth of information there as well. So you can get some great ideas on exercises there.
Yeah, and if you guys have, if you're listening to this and you have any questions, I'll make sure I put in the show notes his email and also his gym's website. That way, if you have any questions or you may want to work with him.
I love this idea of habits, because if you start developing these habits and you just incorporate them and you're mindful of it, we talked earlier about me incorporating fasting as more of a habit now, because I look at fasting as a stress on the body. And so even at my level, I'm trying to figure out how to improve performance.
Right.
And so I'm constantly playing Dr. Frankenstein. So I'm always experimenting on myself. I don't prescribe anything to anybody unless I've done it myself. And I'm improving my fitness. I set a world record last year on the mile, unofficial, on the VersaClimber for a mile at 59 plus in age. And so that's not age group. That was the fastest mile on the climber. And if you get on the VersaClimber, you know how hard that is. So
I'm just trying to figure out how to work it, let alone worry about getting a mile.
Yeah, it's hard. But my point behind all that is a lot of people, and I think we saw this when we were at the conference, there was that interesting discussion about those senior citizens out of a nursing home, and they put them into a different environment of when they were in their 20s. And they dressed them like they were in the these were 80-year-olds. They dressed them like they were in the 50s. They did everything like they put the TV shows that they saw back then, newspapers, for a week, fed them the same way, and then checked all their biomarkers, and everything was better at the end of the week because they saw themselves as being younger. So the only thing I can tell you as being more mature as an athlete is that you have to get out of that mindset. So one of the other habits I would try to do is don't see yourself as not being able to do things, because that's a big mistake and a big limiter on your ability as an athlete and just as a human being in terms of what you're capable of at any age. And we're seeing more of that because we're getting more athletes that are doing amazing things in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So there's no real limit. And the idea of habits is really important in all of that.
Yeah, I would say to go along with that is, anytime you get someone talking about what they used to do as an athlete, they're usually the ones that are farther behind as they age. And it's because they still see themselves as that athlete. And so they don't move ahead and try to figure things out like you or I do, where like, hey, I'm actually like sitting out, hey, how can I actually feel better than I did at 20, 25, 30? How can I perform better than I did then? Because I'm smarter now and I have more knowledge. And not only that, there's more science to back up what we're trying to do. And my mindset is completely different, which is what you said, is like, hey, man, I'm 59, but I'm probably in better shape and healthier than I was 20 years ago.
Oh, no doubt about it. What you said is so true. And you, as a gym owner, you see it all the time. Oh, Jaque, when I was, 25 years ago, I had a 400-pound bench press. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear it.
What can you do today?
Exactly. So when I look at, like, when I ride my bike, I'm always riding with younger guys. I never at the top of the hill say, well, when you get to be my age, you could, then you'll know it's not. No, that never comes out of my mouth, because that's a defeating mentality. You have to stop that. And you have to just look at it as, this is what I'm capable of and I can get better. And I think that if you look at it that way, there's so much more that you can do. But what's happened is, unfortunately, society tells people
what they can do.
Yeah, like, you're a father now. You can't do that stuff anymore. How many times have you heard that? You won't know. You just have to be more clever. You just have to be smarter. You're just going to have to figure it out. And smart guys and smart women will figure it out and go, no, I'm not going to accept that. Why should I? Sure, it gets in the way, but it's no different than, if you were on a trail run and there's a log in the trail, what are you going to have to do? You're not going to say, well, I'm this old, I used to go over this log really easy. No, you figure out a way over it. That's what you do.
I have 3 kids now, so I probably shouldn't go over that. I should probably run back home.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But you have to go ahead and you have to make adjustments, but you don't have to stop. That's what I think. And the idea of doing this consistently is what's going to win as you get older. It's the habits become even more important. As you get older, habits become much more important because you don't have the resiliency that a young person has that doesn't have good habits. So as you get older, habits become much greater and much more valuable, because those are the things that are going to allow you to do the things that you want to do.
That's great, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. So
fantastic.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate you being on here. It's always great to talk to you. And I look forward to many more conversations.
No problem, Jesse. Thanks for having me on. It's a great podcast. I look forward to hearing it when you get it all up.
For sure, man. If you guys are looking to connect further with a group of like-minded people, join myself and so many others in the Habit-Based Lifestyle Secrets group on Facebook. This is where I'll be dropping daily habits to help you live to your full potential. If you want to be one of our next case studies and begin living this habit-based lifestyle, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions, comments, or concerns, or you want to leave us a review. Email me, jesse@habitbasedlifestyle.com. You can also check out my website, Jesse, JESSEEWELL.com. And until next episode, have a great day.